Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Passion from Pain. I'm so excited to have you all here today. Got a very special guest, and he just fits right into the Passion from Pain mentality, and I am just loving that. And so, around here, as you all know, pain isn't something that we just escape. It's the raw material we use to build our strength, courage, and unstoppable momentum. Every conversation is packed with the tools, insights, and real life stories designed to help you rise above the setbacks and claim your power. And today's guest, they've turned their own pain into a blueprint for success, and they're here to share it with you. And welcome, Mr. Caleb Matthews, to the show. How are you doing?
Oh, fantastic. Amy, thank you
Yeah.
very much for having me on the show, on the podcast. This is going to be a dynamic conversation from our pre-conversation to being live on the air with you right now. I know we're going to have a good time. Thank you for having me. This is a privilege and a pleasure.
Yeah. And so you are a motivational speaker, a dream interpreter, a spiritual strategist, and you teach people how to use their dreams and inner vision and divine nudges as tools for breaking through and for transformation in their lives. Let's see, you also went to New Age festivals, Bible colleges. You've been featured on international radio and other leadership podcasts. Cross-cultural spiritual boundaries with a message with a clarity, purpose, and power. That's just amazing. Just get into all that. Tell me all about that. That's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. A huge roller coaster ride of my own personal journey and seeing the link. Hence, our audience can see the name of my businesses is called the C Link. And that really is, in essence, what I believe our life journey is about. It's seeing that link between our life path, our story, and translating that into practical, real world application, not only for ourselves, but for others. And when you say, all right, let's go into your story a bit, Caleb, that's definitely a big Pandora's box, one that I love to explore. Let's go into that together. But in order to do that properly, I need to take you and our audience into the time machine. Now, I had cassette tapes growing up. I'm still old enough to remember cassette tapes. I'm sure you probably do as well too.
Me too.
Yeah, cassette tapes. And one of my favorite shows listening to as a kid when I was homeschooled, by the way, homeschooler, any homeschoolers out there, you can just do a whoop whoop. But I was homeschooled, me and my two older brothers, by my mother, God bless her. And one of the shows that we listened to on the cassette tapes was called Adventures in Odyssey. Now, I'm not sure if you've ever heard of that before, but it's really this dynamic, cool theme and this topic of this really cool old guy that has this time machine in the back of his ice cream shop. And he has all of these kids and young people that come in to like listen to stories. But then when they go into the time machine, they get to travel back in time as well as listen to some good stories, have some good ice cream, and share about the good times. And that being said, this is going to be like our Adventures in Odyssey right now. I'm going to take you and the audience back into Caleb Matthews' time machine. And we're going to go back to when, starting at the age of 6 years old, is really my first vivid memory as a child, as a 6-year-old, was when I started to have these vivid dreams and spiritual experiences in the night season. Now, I distinguish between the daytime and the night season because many people ask me, Caleb, what is a night season? Well, the night season is the realm of dreams, where, by the way, scientifically speaking, you and I spend, and all of us spend, a third of our lives sleeping. So that's a really big chunk of time in our lifespan. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. I feel like I'm slacking so much now.
It's just a big chunk of time. So if we measure by the time that you, Amy, myself, and our audience, each person reaches, let's just say, the age of 60 years old, we'll have slept 20 years of those 60, which is just a huge number. And there's so much happening there, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So much could happen in that 20 years. But what are we experiencing in that time though that's really making a difference in our lives then?
Yeah, that chunk of time. And as a 6-year-old,
Yeah.
people ask me as a grown up, what is your first major memory, Caleb, that you remember when you were young? Well, it was actually one of the first dream experiences that I had as a 6-year-old. And
Mhm.
if remember this, the sound of wind chimes, obviously, right, Amy? Just a
Oh
beautiful
yeah.
wind
Oh
going
yeah.
through the wind
Oh
chimes.
yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Oh yeah.
As a 6-year-old, I would go to sleep. My mom would tuck me in and say, "Good night, Caleb." Close the door, and I would start to fall asleep. And that round between waking up and being asleep, it's called the lucid state. Now,
Mhm.
some people may be familiar with that state, some not, but that lucid state is not quite when you've reached sleep, but not quite being awake. It's as you're transitioning into sleep. And as a six
Mhm.
year old, I would recall almost like the sound of beautiful wind chimes tinkling over my ears audibly in the
Wow.
room as I was starting to fall
Yeah.
asleep. And I was like, wow, like there's no wind chimes anywhere in the natural close to my bedroom. Something's really going on.
Wow.
And then I would just feel a sense of peace, of calm, of you're okay. We're watching over you. Higher power, God is watching over you. Like even hearing
Mhm.
soft voices of just like speaking over me, saying, "We're watching you, Caleb. It's okay. It's okay." So of course, when you wake up as a 6-year-old, you think, "Wow, that's pretty nuts." So like,
Right.
Mom, what is
Well,
it? What's going on here? Tell me what's going on, right?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, and I was thinking, man, if I went 6-year-old and that's happening to me, I'm gonna go the other way and I'm gonna be terrified. You had a sense of calm and peace, though. That's interesting.
Yeah, calm, peace, curiosity. Because
Yeah,
as a homeschooler,
yeah,
just being raised with, I was raised, by the way, with the homeschooling method, but also when homeschooling was starting to become a thing growing up, and this was like over 32 years ago now because I'm 38, it was more
yeah,
of a newer thing on the block, at least where I'm from. Like
yeah.
I'm from Canada, and it was newer in my neighborhood, in my city. It wasn't as much of a normal mainstream thing. And my mother, and received probably she did a lot of kickback and flack for homeschooling her kids. People being, "Oh, you're irresponsible. They belong in a public
Mhm.
school system. Like, what are you doing?" Like all this kind of persecution, right, from the social and emotional aspect. But she raised us as homeschoolers. And one of the things that we were included in the curriculum was the ancient texts and the biblical texts of really understanding the Hebraic method of dream interpretation, of studying our dreams, of okay, our dreams are a roadmap towards what the higher power, what God, what creator is speaking to us and what we can apply to our
Mhm.
lives. We would study people like Harriet Tubman, George Washington, Marco Polo, Christopher Columbus, Joan of Arc, like people in history that many people know of these names, but not a lot of people associate with people who actually had vivid dreams in the night season that they used
Right.
as a roadmap and a guide and a code to help them in their lives. What do you think about that, Amy?
Interesting. Interesting. It's really interesting because, yeah, you don't hear about that. I mean, I've read a little bit about Joan of Arc and some of the visions that she had had, and of course, God speaking to her and her mission and her purpose in life. But a lot of these others, I haven't heard any of their stories about their dreams and the interpretations. So it's really interesting to learn about.
Yeah. It's like Harriet Tubman. I think she's still on the US $20 bill. Am I correct? Like like at least from the
I think so.
currency when I went down there years ago. But Harriet Tubman's on the
Yeah,
bill.
yeah,
Most people hear Harriet Tubman, okay, story of a slave who escaped to
yeah,
north to freedom, went through Pennsylvania, went to Canada. She was very, divinely guided. But as far as like the actual intricate details of the divine guidance, I'm surprised that many people don't know that Harriet Tubman was actually an avid dreamer in the night season. Like this was part of her roadmap to freedom. So when she would run from south to north and she was hiding in swamps and hiding from guard dogs and shotguns and people that really not only wanted to hurt her, but possibly kill her or take her back and make an example of her, she would fall
yeah,
asleep as she was hiding and she would have these vivid dreams where God would say, "Harriet, that's the house you need to go to. You can trust them. That's the house that you shouldn't go to. You can't trust them." And she would use her dreams as a roadmap all the way from south to north, all the way to Freedom Land and ultimately to where I am, to Canada, and then back many times over. Like she had 12 to 13 different missions, it's estimated. I think I looked it up in ChatGPT. Some people say 12, 13, 15. It's like a rough number, but 15 different missions going back and forth even after she escaped and leading other people back to freedom. And it says that Harriet Tubman was attributed to leading between 250 to 300 slaves to freedom by herself. Well, she wasn't really by herself. God was infusing her dreams as a roadmap and a guide. So she wasn't really alone.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. Just hearing that whole side of it, and so I mean, at what point did you embrace this gift in yourself, instead of thinking about running from it, or realize that this is what was happening to you, is that you were getting these dreams, these downloads for a higher purpose or vision for yourself?
Yeah, through those years of being a 6-year-old all the way into early teenhood, like I would have these dreams, these vivid dream night experiences on a frequent basis. Like it wasn't just like a one-off thing, a couple of years pass and then you dream again. Some people don't have dreams frequently, but for me, it was a very frequent weekly and sometimes nightly thing on some of the years. And I was like, okay, what's happening here? Because it's like when you look at a musician or an athlete, right? Like you look at Michael Jordan highlights and you think, okay, Michael Jordan was born to play basketball, or Celine Dion, she was born to sing. That's just what she is born to do. And for me, it was more or less dreaming was a part of my life. It wasn't just a pit stop on the road. It was frequently happening. So it became part of my DNA of design, is what I call it, that seeing that link between the DNA of my design, because it wasn't just being a dreamer, but it was having an active lifestyle of dreaming. And that's really what separated me from, okay, this is a few cool experiences I had as a kid, and now I'm going on to my teen years. No, it was a constant thread and a story through my young life. And being a homeschooler, I had my brothers as my classmates. My dad, he was able to coach us in football. I call it like soccer, but the Europeans call it football. Like it's European football is the name of soccer, right? Football, some people say, oh, NFL, throwing the football. Like, yeah, that's American football, but Europeans would shudder if I say soccer. So I'm going to say football. Football.
Oh, yeah.
My dad
You're
raised my 2 older brothers in football, and my mom homeschooled us just to have that dynamic of social interaction outside the home. But very quickly, as a young boy and as a teenager, my teammates quickly began to realize that I wasn't going to be the normal kid that was going to like party in my, like teen years, or stay up late, or cuss or swear, or just do eventually go to have underage drinking, because some of them were doing as well too, or just fool around. Like I wasn't into any of that. I could hardly wait to get back home from playing soccer, playing football, because I wanted to get back at home and study the ancient texts. I wanted to study how God spoke in the scriptures, how God spoke to Joseph and Daniel, Harriet Tubman, Joan of Arc, in history past and also history, more recent history, and really learn, okay, if I can be encouraged from their lives, there's something in my life that can be encouraged as well too. And I'm not alone, because I think a lot of our audience listening right now, especially in those childhood formative years, it's a very vulnerable time. We're either included or we really feel alone. And for me, because my belief and my faith in God and Christ, like I follow Jesus, but not religion. I'll get into that. But the family, the rest of the extended family didn't understand that. So there was very much a social persecution and emotional persecution on the way that my family raised me, my parents and my brothers, all of us were raised, because the extended family didn't really embrace this to the full like we were. And it really caused us to be isolated for a long period of time in many senses. We just wouldn't do the things that were called natural or normal because of the call of just the godly ingrained principle that was in my life. I just couldn't do these things. My parents, we just couldn't do those other things. So there's a lot of kickback. And I was like, Mom, I remember going to my mom's room one day and saying, Mom, why is why do people not understand? Like, not just extended family, but just out there, my teammates, this, like, why do I get laughed at in this way or that way? And my mom would say, well, you know what? God, the Spirit of God, creator, higher power, God, say God in this sense, will never leave you and never forsake you, that God is close to you in your breath and in your dreams. So for me, falling asleep and looking forward to dreaming was my way of, I can hardly wait for God to speak to me, because I know that beyond my family that loves me, God is not going to keep me alone.
That's awesome. That's such a comforting kind of feeling, almost like, having that blanket. You know that you just know that you're going to be living this or walking this path, which is going to isolate you a bit from a lot of people, because a lot of people aren't going to subscribe to this kind of ideology, and you, like you said, you will be persecuted a little bit. But having that comfort of knowing that this is what God has planned for you, that's it's a bold thing to be able to accept that, and not get into or fall for, well, I need to fall in line with what everybody else wants, and how do you pull that out of yourself, because it's so easy to fall in line with what everybody else wants, because everybody wants to be included, everybody wants to be accepted and whatnot. And so that's a tough one. How do you do that for yourself?
It's really more. How'd you do that for yourself? It's okay. The big question.
No, I know, right? Yeah. We go deep. Sorry.
Yeah. I love it. I love going deep. This is why we're on the show together. Right. This is why I reached out. This is why we had just a great time in our pre-meeting, and also onto the podcast, going deep, because I think our world is really tired of surface level conversation, really tired of just the outward bickering and not really going on the inner depth, because there's so much noise going on. And I think that there really is, and this is something I wrote about today on social media, there really is, in my perspective, this is my interpretation, there's a trauma bond to all of the chaos that's going on in the world right now. I'm not saying that there isn't bad things happening, or we shouldn't have our eyes open and be aware of what's happening. Can't be an ostrich with their head in the sand either. But we can't we can't bond with every trauma that's going on. Otherwise, we're never going to be able to walk our individual purpose and our life path. And to answer your question, to get back into what you were asking me about, how did I do this? Well, really it was following my conscience, because one of the great cloud of witnesses and people that I studied in history growing up homeschooling, that I still is one of my championing heroes, was Martin Luther, great Martin Luther, who was obviously the one that championed the Reformation, for any of the scholars out there that look into that, Lutheranism and Lutheranism. But one of the things that he said was, to go against conscience is neither right nor safe. My conscience is captive to the will of God. And from a young age, it was that inner chamber, that gut feeling, as you've probably heard before, you and I have heard before, our audience have heard before, that conscience, higher power, spirit, creator, God, whatever a person attributes to it. For me, I believe it's God, but that conscience of, okay, just like Harriet Tubman, this is where you're supposed to go. This is what you can't do. This is what you should do. This is what I'm encouraging you to do. And really is about stepping into the DNA of my design. And that's something I speak about a lot on the C-Link, is encouraging people to reach the purpose to which they've been created. Because every single person on this planet, all the billions of people on this planet, and those that have been, those that are, and those that will be coming, the billions and billions of people, every single person is created intricately, uniquely, like nobody else. Even with cloning, even with all the DNA crazy things that are happening today, you can't clone. You can't clone Amy to 100% nth degree. You can't clone Caleb to that 100% cellular degree. You can't clone the audience person, the man or woman listening to this right now on this podcast, to the 100% degree. It's the DNA of our design. And so how did I get out of this? It was and get through this? Well, it's continuing to pursue the DNA of my design, knowing I'm a dreamer, knowing I'm hearing God's voice, knowing that I'm not called conventionally, but I'm called in an unconventional way. Like, you want to talk about like kickback. Well, it wasn't just from extended family. It was from the main adversary. Family was extended family was a big one, not understanding the call, not understanding what we were walking with in our walk with Jesus and walk with God. But really, it was institutional Christianity. So institutional religion, not accepting, oh, well, we don't like your message that you're bringing forth, you and your family, because I believe, and my parents, if they're sitting here in the room in this podcast, would say the same thing. We believe in the priesthood of all believers, everyone who follows God. What does that mean, Caleb? Well, that everybody has a voice, not just the men in the suits, not just the people that are standing up on the platform, not just the pastor, not just the prophet or the apostle, but everybody has an imprint of God's voice in their life to be able to, everyone has a voice. There's no mediator between God and man except for Jesus. That's what we believe. And that is, to the organized institutional machine, is a threat, because superstar Christendom is a real thing. Like just like going down the highway in New York City and seeing, like just Broadway, or going into LA and seeing Beverly Hills and all the superstars. Well, superstar organized Christendom is a thing. And unfortunately, the farther that we've gotten on the timeline away from the real Jesus who walked the earth with his disciples, the farther away we've gotten from the original message of the Gospels, which was everybody has a voice. Why were the ones that were around the cross was only one of his disciples, John the Beloved, and all the women. In Jesus's day, women were considered dogs, but yet he considered them worthy of the highest honor of being close to him, even in his lowest moments. And this whole podcast from passion, passion from pain, right? Passion from pain.
Yep.
Passion is these mountaintops. And this is something that one of my mentors taught me, growing up in my young teen years, especially when I was in Salem, when I was at Streams Academy as a teenager, going to the post-secondary school of understanding dreams and mysteries of the night season. One of my mentors, he taught this. He said, to the proportion of your valley is to the proportion of your mountain. The proportion of your valley is parallel to the proportion of your mountain. What does that mean? Well, it means this. The more suffering and punches that you've taken in your life, and I'm speaking right to somebody right now who's listening to this, who needs to hear this, the more times that you've been knocked down and the harder life's been for you and the more trauma you've been in, whether that be emotionally, physically, relationally, socially, whatever it is the higher your mountain of authority is to speak to somebody else. Yep. That is absolute truth.
Agree. Oh yeah. Yep. I've seen it so many times, and and I feel it as well, just within myself, and it's kind of what brought me to create this platform and create the courses that I created. Did I go to school for psychology? No, but I went to school in, the school of hard knocks and learning the hard way how to, crawl from the traumas and the toxicity and get to this point so that I can help and teach everybody. And so that's what this is all about. And so I 1,000% agree with that. I've seen it so many times, even a bunch of the clients that I have and a bunch of the listeners, they would absolutely agree with it. It's what it is. Yeah.
It is what it is. And another one of my mentors said this. He said, I never trust a man or a woman who does not show their limp.
Yes.
I'll never trust somebody who doesn't show their humanity. One of his favorite things to do when I was at Streams Academy, this is now going into my teen years now, from the homeschooling years into the teen years, into my 18 years old time now, I went to a place called Streams Academy in New London, New Hampshire, little town in New Hampshire on the east side of the United States, where, by the way, it sounds like many of your listeners, you've told me, tuned in from the East Coast. So any East Coasters in New Hampshire or Massachusetts, here's it for you. New London, New Hampshire. I was in Streams Academy. And one of the places, that we went to, of course, was Salem, as Amy referenced to, where we would sit in booths and interpret dreams for people of all kinds of spiritualities, from atheists to polytheists to New Agers, to Muslims, to Buddhists, to Christians, to Jews, to whatever you name it, right? Of whatever spirituality someone adhere to, they're coming for this experience. Like Salem it's the Mardi Gras of spirituality. For anybody who has not heard of haunted happenings in Salem and never experienced it, you got to go.
I'm gonna have to go check it out because I've never heard it explained that way. The Mardi Gras of spirituality. I'm intrigued now. I gotta go check it out.
I gotta check it out. Like it's people are coming there. It's like it's Stonehenge but on steroids in the best possible way. Like Stonehenge is a summer solstice. I've been there during the summer solstice. Amazing experience where you can touch the stones only 1 of 2 times a year that you can touch the stones. You can actually touch them and walk amongst them. The other 363 days a year, it's fenced off. But this Salem haunted happenings is Stonehenge on steroids. And what I mean by that is it's a whole month of a festival of celebration, of encounters, of spirituality, hearing from, like hunger for hearing from the voice and the unseen. Like there's a very much a portal. Like you're probably familiar with the term. There is a portal of energy in that place of hunger that draws people from all over. And when I was there and in the days leading up to it, our mentor, he would often say this to us. And he would say what I referenced before: never trust somebody, man or a woman in life, who does not carry a limp. And he was an amazing man of amazing wisdom who was able to share as many experiences that he experienced, but he would always prelude his stories with sharing something that was goofy or silly or a failure that he had. Why did he do that? To bring himself down to a human level. So he showed he's human, not some, as I said, megastar, untouchable person behind their yellow tape that couldn't be touched. That's institutional Christendom or institutional religion. And by the way, religion, it's not just religion I'm talking about within like a faith-based system. I mean, like anything can be a religion. Like Hollywood can be a religion. Sports can be a religion. Like being untouchable to where someone can't approach you and actually experience your humanity. We're putting ourselves outside the realm of actually being relatable to people. And I think that's what so refreshing about your podcast, Amy, and places like this where people can really engage and connect with the deep conversations that aren't everyone has it figured out. Because I certainly don't have it figured out. I'm still on the journey. We're all still on the journey. And that's really what this is about, is taking these human moments of frailty and of our struggles and translating them into authority and moments of liberty for people, because my story isn't just for me, it's for everybody that's listening. And if I can reach one person that was encouraged today, that's worth it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's amazing. And, that's why we do this, is so that, other people do understand that, it's not the end. And we go through this so that we can help other people, and evolve ourselves, and get to those higher places within ourselves and understand ourselves and our purpose and our place a lot better. And it's a different way to look at it for sure, and some people would even go so far as to saying that, it's a little insensitive to put it that way. But, I think it's actually quite the opposite, really. I think it's a lot more comforting to think and understand that, all the nonsense I went through, there was a reason for it. And a higher reason.
Yeah, a higher purpose, a higher plan. And you're right. Someone who's going through the pain and the trauma can be like, oh, like, how could you say that about my life? Like, are you legitimizing the person who gave me the trauma? No. Or the experience? No, absolutely not. But God, and I'm just going to say this. I'm going to take a risk and say this.
Yeah.
God is not taken aback by the shortcomings of humanity. It's not like he's sitting up there in the sky saying, "Oh crap, I didn't see that coming." Like God will move heaven and earth to get you and I to where we need to be. And if that means walking through the valley of the shadow of death, Psalms 23, one of the most famous psalmists of all time, David said, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." And all of us go through the valley of the shadow of death. All of us go through the mountains. It's not human to say that we're going to live on the mountain forever in this world because there's going to be trials and tribulation. In the same way, you're not going to live in the valley of the shadow of death forever, because it's a fleeting thing, this shadow, as Samwise Gamgee says in Lord of the Rings, one of my favorite books and movies of all time. The shadow is a passing thing, but a new day is coming when the sun will shine and shine out the clear. Like, that was written by J.R.R. Tolkien. History speaks, like Tolkien, who walked through the trenches of World War I, who saw some of the most traumatic things that any human being will ever see. Gas warfare, people dying in front of his face, the psychological, physical, and emotional trauma of going through the trenches of World War I. And a lot of his inspirations for Lord of the Rings was written through what he saw in the trenches. And maybe you're listening to this thinking, okay, Caleb, I'm not like J.R.R. Tolkien. I'm not in the military. Maybe some of you fought in the military, but not in the military. I didn't have that psychologically traumatic experience. So maybe your experience is a different psychological traumatic experience. Maybe it's a different emotional traumatic experience or a physical traumatic experience. But your trench is not forever. I want to reiterate that. Your trench is not forever. There is a time when you get to come out of the trench, you go across no man's land. That's the terminology that was used in World War I. When you cross the barbed wire, you hear the whistle blow, and then you cross no man's land and you head through that. And there is that moment. There's that Wonder Woman moment. I'm going all over the place here, but I love Wonder Woman, by the way.
You're good. You're good.
There's that Wonder Woman moment where she decides, which is amazing, where she decides, I'm going to get up out of the trench and I'm going to like go up. And they're like, no, Diana, no, like you can't, like, and the machine guns are shooting and she's holding up the shield and the whole army follows her because she decides there's a moment that comes where I can't stay in the trench. She said, I've come here to do this. We're talking about DNA of design. Like, I remember like her buddy says to him, she says, Diana, we didn't come here to like, stop all of this pain and suffering. It's not what we came to do. And then she turns and she says, no, but this is what I came to do. And then she like turns forward, she gets up off the trench, she walks into no man's land and she pushes across it to get to the other side. Now that is an allegory, a parable, an example for you and I, for all of us. There comes a moment where we have to get up out of the trench. We got to go through no man's land, no woman's land, and through the place of the unknown. And we got to face the machine gun bullets, those bullets of doubt, self-doubt, those bullets of maybe word curses that other people have tried throwing at us. But these bullets do not define you, because the scriptures say that the arrow that flies by day or by night, the deadly pestilence shall not come nigh unto you when you are walking in your purpose, when you are walking with God. And I want to declare that to someone right now. If you're someone, you're like, you know what? I'm going through my trench. I'm going through my no man's land, my no woman's land, and I'm trying to have the courage to get up again. You can do it, because the deadly pestilence shall not come nigh unto you when you put your trust in God, when you put your trust in your purpose to which you've been created, which is your DNA of design. So you can do it. If no one else has ever told you, Amy and I are here today to say you can get up again. Now is the time to get up again and face it. And even if only 2 people believe in you, me and Amy, we're here for you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I just know from personal experience, because I've done it. It's going from, bawling my eyes out on the bathroom floor with the door closed because I didn't want my kid to see me, to, where I'm at now. And, it came to the point where I had to have that realization that, my prayers alone were not going to pull me through. I had to meet God, Jesus, halfway, and I had to do I had to do the work, and he would fill me with the motivation and the wherewithal to do the things, but I had to act. And so, if you're just sitting there waiting for the miracle and for the prayer to be answered, you've got to understand that you've got to meet him halfway. It's the only way. But it'll give you the strength. You ask for it.
Yeah, it's the faith and the action. Like, faith sees. Like, that's what it says in Hebrews, is faith sees. Not faith is dormant. Faith sees. And so when we co-labor, that is part of what we're doing in the purpose in which we've been created. Because we're human beings, not human stayings. we're beings. Right. Like we're doing. We're co-laboring. And one of the ways that Jesus talked about different parables, he talked about the parable of the talents, and the way that 3 people were judged by is what they did with their talent, what they did with their time, what they did with their giftings. And that's what we're talking about here, is this art of reinventing yourself. Like, I was raised in a homeschooling home. I went to a school of dream interpretation. I traveled the world, went to Africa and the Philippines. My family helped start a ministry with a very well-known, charismatic Christian ministry that many people would know if I named their names. But, you know, like we started that, but then we had what was happened like a Charlie Brown situation. You know, when Lucy pulls the football away from Charlie Brown and he falls on his head and goes, ah,
Yeah.
it falls on his head.
Yep.
We have that. We have that, but except it wasn't all fun and games and getting up and having Snoopy lick your face. It was trauma. It was like Uriah in the Bible. Like, one of the most horrific stories in the scripture was when Uriah, one of David's best friends and most loyal servants in his kingdom, he sent his friend out to the front lines to be killed because he wanted Bathsheba, his wife. Like, the whole story of, like, he steals another man's wife, like that's what he did so that he could get Uriah out of the way. That's what happened to my parents and us and our family. We helped establish a ministry in Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania, and in the Philippines, and spent thousands of dollars. Now, keep in mind, growing up, I was homeschooled. My dad was in the corporate world for telecom. He served in TELUS, like your version of AT&T or Verizon, for 35 years in the corporate world. And he retired because we were all going to give full hog into traveling and ministering and doing this. Like, I went to Africa when I was 18. I know I'm just glossing through some of the story here, but when I was 18 years old, my mother and my dad, was my mother's idea. Of course, it's always moms with a great idea. She's like, let's experience a culture outside of Western culture. Let's experience people who have it worse off. Because my grandpa always would say to my mother when she was growing up, Catherine, there's always somebody who's better off. There's always somebody who's worse off. And my mother thought it would be a good idea for us to go to Africa, for me and my dad to go to Africa. My oldest brother went to Africa with me on one of the trips too. But when I was 18, we went to Africa, and that's where I found my passion to speak. I began my first public speaking session at an orphanage in Nahururu, Kenya, when I was 18 years old, speaking to 13 or 15 orphans, in a dirty mud hut. But these faces were leaning in, and they wanted to hear what this interesting, strange, white-looking guy from Canada was going to tell them about how they had meaning and purpose, and why God was close to their life, even in poverty. Because I think we think we know what poverty means when we see people who are less fortunate in Canada or the United States or the Western world. Anyone who has not been to Africa, like, I'm not sure if you've been to Africa or like Asia or like any of these places, but poverty in Africa it makes you shake. Like, it made me shake when I saw how bad it was. Have you been to those places, Amy?
I haven't been to those places, but I have been to some pretty impoverished areas in Mexico.
Yeah.
So I've seen it from there, and it's here. It's nothing like any of those other places. I mean, they're rich. Our impoverished are rich compared to the other areas. It's interesting.
For sure. Yeah. And going to Africa and seeing that and speaking and finding my passion to speak. Like, I'm good at entrepreneurial endeavors. Like, I helped my mother with her landscaping business when I was 13 years old. That was part of what funded our missions to Africa and the Philippines, was working hard for summer after summer while other people were going out partying and drinking and just spending money on clothes and, girlfriends or whatever like that. I was like working hard in the dirt with my mother, and we were working in what was called Back to Eden Landscaping. It was just really working for some of the highest, wealthiest clients. A guy who owns the Calgary Flames, who lives in London, England now. A guy who owns Shaw Cable, who's passed away now. Like, one of the biggest like telecom industries, like in Canada. Like, some big clients, wealthy clients. While my dad simultaneously was working in the corporate world. And when we really found this passion to Africa to really just speak and serve and minister, we thought this was going to be our life calling. I thought I was going to be, talk about the art of reinventing yourself. I thought I was going to be spending my life as a minister, a preacher. I was ordained and traveled to Africa 6-7 times, spent thousands of dollars on my own. It wasn't funded by any ministry. It was our own funding. It was me working for my mother paying for her own way, my paying for my own way, dad paying for his own way. Heck, when my dad even got his retirement package from TELUS, a lot of the people, many people who weren't even of the same faith or spirituality, they gave him some money to be able to actually put through. It was like $30,000 to fund towards the Africa work. So there was a lot of people. And of course, that money came from my mother's landscaping clients as well. So it was a combination of both. Majority was from my mother's landscaping clients. A chunk was from my dad's coworkers that gave him this package. And we poured so much into these people. They became like our own family, like went over many times, putting my life on the line, my parents putting their life on the line, like stories that would make your skin crawl. Like, just like praying that people like that would pass by our hotel we were staying in, would come in and break in and like stab us to death, like some really dangerous places, some radical Al-Qaeda bases and places that have radicalization and behead Christians and kill Christians, like some really crazy places that we were in, speaking and putting our lives on the line for. And what happened is the work eventually got transitioned to this ministry in the United States, this charismatic ministry. And one of the things that the guy that introduced us to the work, who's from Washington, he said, okay, we want the Matthews to be involved in the work. But then, of course, the guys in California, the big charismatic ministry in Northern California, they said, oh, well, and this is what the head prophet of the house said. He said, I have a feeling about those people. I just have a feeling that they're just not the people I want to work with. So we're going to take their work away from them and just rip that away from them and say they can't be a part of it. And that's what happened. After 15 years of working together with a friend that we'd had in a ministry in Washington who transitioned the work to this big mega charismatic ministry in Northern California, we were told that because of some prophet's feeling about us, which is obviously a feeling of jealousy, we weren't going to be able to be involved in the work that we helped found and build. My dad even dedicated one of the main leaders over in Africa, his son, and was dedicating his son many months after he was born. Like it's crazy. Like, it was really crazy. And we were stonewalled by organized Christendom because of a feeling that they had. Long story short, when we confronted the man of God about it, we essentially said to him, look, you murdered us. Like, you did exactly what is in the Bible, where you took away our lamb, and then you told us that, oh, well, we're just going to send you out to die, so to speak. Like, we're just going to pull back and try to disenfranchise ourselves from you and persecute you and blackball you. So my name and our family's name was blackballed all across every contact we've made. And you want to talk about the art of reinventing yourself and being in a painful season, like a painful chunk of time. This was back in 2010, 2011, 12, 13. And having to restart over again and do the very thing that I thought that I would never do. And that was go into the corporate world full time and work 9 to 5. So I did that for the next 11 years. But during that 11 years, I never let go of the gift, because my mentor always taught me, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I was like, okay, if the organized religious Christian system does not want to hear my message and has blackballed me and thinks that me and my family are awful, I'm going to turn towards people, the Gentiles, those in the world that are hungry for hearing from the voice of the Spirit, and speak to them. So that's when we started to just upping the ante and started going with them more and more to New Age fairs and festivals and conventions, speaking on podcasts, speaking to anybody that would hear about the message of the DNA of design, understanding mysteries of the night season, and seeing that link between the purpose to which they've been created and their night dreams, and of course what's happening in their life. But the main crime, Amy may think so, oh my goodness, like, why do they not want to accept your message? Well, because organized Christendom, which has gone off the rails from the message of Jesus and the early church, organized Christendom has mediators, and these mediators look in the form of, oh, if you're not submitted under your pastor, under the head apostle or prophet, then you're outside the will of God. Well, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that they met by rivers, on mountains, in valleys, in marketplaces, in homes. That's what the early church did. but this whole megastar having to give yourself over to this organized mega ministry religious cult is what it is. And our message that was a threat was everybody plays, the priesthood of all believers. The Martin Luther message that we echoed, which was you don't need indulgences. You don't need these mediators between you. And that was the trauma that we had that really forged my life and forged our life to really press on, because pain does not define me. It doesn't define you. It doesn't define us. But we keep on pressing on to the high calling and the goal of God that he's placed on our lives. And so that's a mouthful, but that's a big chunk of the movement between walking into the 20 years of public speaking experience. By the way, I still speak. That's why I have the C link. But that was a the ministry season of being out in the missions field. And if I have that season that comes up again, I'm open to it. But you know what? It's not going to stop my message, because Caleb, the name Caleb, actually has a very interesting name meaning. Have you ever heard of the name meaning of Caleb in the Arabic before?
No, what's that?
Desert dog.
Desert dog. Okay.
So I figured this out years ago when I was 16. I was at a conference. My parents and I were together, and there's a speaker that was talking about, he picked me out and he said, "Stand up, son." I stood up and he's like, "Do you know what your name means?" And I said, "Faithful." I think that's the translation. He's like, "Yeah, it does. That's one layer." But the Arabic and the original name that Caleb was named for is desert dog. And I was like, well, what does desert dog mean? He said, "Let me explain that to you." And he explained it to the whole conference. There's like probably a couple hundred people there. Desert dogs were like the sheep dogs of the ancient world. They went in front of the caravan and they guarded the back of the caravan. So they were guards on both ends. Okay. And they made sure that none of the marauders or the bandits or the enemies of the caravan would come and steal away the camels which had the water, or attack them and take their supplies. They were the ones that were looking ahead, seeing the link ahead. There, you got that there. And then seeing behind. And that's really what my namesake is really to look ahead, to learn from history, and to be present. But we got to be in all three places. We got to learn from our history. History speaks. Be present. Look for what's being spoken around us, what God is speaking to you and I, and looking ahead as well too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've got to be able to face that pain. You've got to be able to face the past and not continue to push it aside. And that with, his messaging and finding that purpose within yourself and through all of the trials, that's really what is going to bring you to this place where you do have this passion for the purpose that you have discovered in your life. That's what is going to ignite all of it for you and get you to where you are just excited and motivated to put this thing together, or to go after this or that, or pursue, whatever it is in your life. And that's just really that secret recipe right there.
Yeah, the art of reinventing ourselves. Like one of the things that my dad taught me growing up, and his father before him. I didn't get to know my original grandpa. He died when my father was 11 years old. But one generational message that's been passed along from him to my father to myself is this message, and that is embrace the art of reinventing yourself on the fly. Reinvent yourself on the fly, because like a butterfly in a metamorphosis, that's really what life is all about. It's about reinventing ourselves on the fly so that we can emerge from that cocoon, and that cocoon has its purpose, and that purpose is to launch us out to be the biggest influence and encouragement and inspiration to others around us, because that's really what it boils down to, is walking in our purpose, but also helping others raise up and to elevate their game as well too. Because as human beings, we're interconnected. How boring it would be if the whole world was a bunch of Calebs or a bunch of Amy's, right? We're all here for each other, or a bunch of our audience that's listening. You fill in the blanks and do it, right? But reinventing yourself. And so from my homeschooling years to being a young entrepreneur, landscaping, and being a youth football referee from a young age, and learning that dynamic, to going to Africa and the Philippines in my teen years, in my early 20s, to experiencing obviously the trauma of being persecuted by organized religion. And by the way, the persecution doesn't stop just because you leave that field. It's still there. Like when I go to New Age fairs or festivals or conventions, and I do public speaking or I offer my content online, the main opposition to the C-Link message is not people who even have different spiritual or faith beliefs than I do. Unfortunately, it's often the people who claim to follow the same God that I do that say, oh, well, you're outside of protocol or you're outside the fellowship. Well, define what fellowship is. It's where 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. That's it. And the message of the gospel is that when Jesus tore the veil and said, it is finished, it was finished. That meant the end of temple-based religion, synagogues, mosques, churches, like all that. Like the Spirit was meant to go out and be amongst all of us in the world. He said, go ye into all the world. He didn't say, go ye into the local church. And I know that would be an offensive thing for some people to hear, but that's just the reality. Is that he said, go ye into the nations, not back into a building. In fact, in the Gospels, when the disciples, after, had resurrected and he said, go into all the world, what did they do? They went back into the upper room and just sat around in Jerusalem, and they didn't go out again until the tongues of the Spirit fell and they had tongues of fire that pushed them out. But it was persecution that pushed them out. In the same way for you and I, from passion, from pain does serve a purpose. And that is to push us out into the passion and to reach that purpose. Without pain, there is no passion. Like when we're born, nobody, like a woman that goes through childbirth, there is no passion without that pain. It just doesn't exist. It just doesn't
it's so
exist.
true. It's so true. It's so true. It's really difficult, if not impossible, to get that fire inside of you for something without having gone through something painful, something, and you just can't have one without the other. Unfortunately, I wish it was the other way around. That'd be wonderful. That's just not the way any of this works. Unfortunately,
that's right. It isn't. Yeah.
But that gives the audience a lot of hope. You've been through some nonsense in your life and some BS, and it's human. It's the human experience, and that's not to say that this is the end of your experience. In fact, it's just the beginning of your reinvention.
It's just the beginning of the chapter. Like when I was in the corporate world, just jumping into that page now, I was able to get to the very top of the telecom. Like I followed in my father's footsteps, served in the telecom world for 11 years, and was one of the top salespeople in the retail environment. I worked 9 to 5, 40 hours a week, sitting behind the same desk. But I got to go on the trips to Seattle and watch the Mariners and the Jays games. I got to go to Las Vegas and sit in the lower bowl and watch the Stanley Cup Finals and get taken around in limousines and get to experience the Las Vegas lifestyle and the nice hotels and the helicopter rides. I got to do a lot of those things and win the trophies, but I was bored. I got to the point where I was bored. I was like, okay, it's time to expand again, God, it's time to expand again. Like it's time to be an entrepreneur because I can't sit in one spot forever. I'm not going to do this forever. Yeah. And there came a time 2 years ago where I said this, and I've got this in my notes here. That's good here. And that is the Jabez principle. And that is in 1 Chronicles 4, 9 to 10, where Jabez asks God to bless him to enlarge his territory, to keep his hand with him and protect him from harm, that he may not cause pain for others. There's that theme again. But I wanted to expand my tent. I wanted to expand it. So I said to my boss, said to the owner of the company, hey, I've been one of your top guys for 10 plus years. I've put the ball in the back of the net. I've let my history speak. I've done the walking through it. I've earned my stripes. Here's this business proposal I have. I want to work in Mexico for 6 months and still funnel traffic to your stores and work remotely and do remote sales. I'll help funnel traffic in there. And the other 6 months, I'll come back to Canada and I'll roam around the stores and all the stores you have across Western Canada and support the employees that are coming up and coach them and do that as an idea. I even bet on myself to say, hey, I'm willing to take a pay decrease to make this work. Give me 1 year. Just give me 1 year as a trial run and let me work this out. I even asked corporate executives, like my father who worked in the arena, as well as other corporate executives that were higher up than my boss, and they all vetted it and said, this is a great proposal. Someone would be nuts not to take it. Well, what happens? Mm-hmm. Well, in 2023, I'm in the airport in Houston, Texas. I talk on the phone with I got a phone call from my boss. And he says, let's talk about your proposal. And I said, okay, let's talk. And he said, well, Caleb, he said, online sales, I'll never forget this. He said, online sales doesn't work. I couldn't believe my ears. I couldn't believe my ears. I'm like, what era are you living in? I'm thinking like, because he's from the old school era of you clock into the same store, you do the same thing, you do all that. He wasn't open to even learning or having me bring up forward an idea. And I knew at that moment that you do not believe, to my boss, I'm just thinking this in my head, you do not believe in the DNA of my design. You don't. Mm-hmm. And therefore I have to move on. And so that's where my Mexico idea that I had brewing up was. I got residency. My family and I got residency in Mexico. And we bought property in San Jose del Cabo. We each got like a condo. And I converted my condo into, I left the job, by the way, left after 10 years. People were shocked and thought, what are you doing? You're leaving like a solid 5-figure, eventually to 6-figure job for uncertainty. Like, what are you doing, Caleb? Like, just like me shake you up a bit? Like, no,
he's lost it.
He's lost it. But no, to go against conscience is neither right nor safe. And that's what I said to my boss. To go against my conscience would be an offense, not just to me, but to God. And I couldn't stand in front of God at the end of my life saying that I settled for something less than my purpose. I couldn't do it. And I said, I got to move on. So I moved on to Mexico, built the last couple of years this itinerant oasis business that many of you see on the ticker tape on the bottom there, the itinerant oasis. And what's the vision between the itinerant oasis? Well, it's to have a place for digital nomads, professionals, online content creators, podcasters like yourself, Amy, those out there as well too, like myself, to have a studio to work from and to still experience the fun in the sun and relax, chill from the winter blues, but have a studio. Like I've got 2 work desks, 1 gigabit fiber internet, lighting, microphones, everything that you need. All you got to do is bring your headphones and your laptop, and everything else is set up. There's no place like it in the Baja, anywhere in our property. In fact, our property manager says I'm the only one with 1 gig on the whole hotel strip, on the whole street. I'm the only one that has that. Awesome. So it's a place specifically for online content creators and people who are digital nomads and movers to come to. And I've been doing that for 2 years. And this is my 3rd season this fall, and a month and a half to go back down there again. But you see, this is the art of reinventing yourself. And that's been my journey in a nutshell. Is I went from thinking I was going to be a full-time minister and in the organized Christian church to being full-time in the traditional corporate world. And now with all those experiences and my entrepreneurial upbringing, I'm my own boss, but I'm still using that exhortation message of speaking to people about their seeing the link between the purpose to which they were created and their path in life.
Yeah. And, it's interesting that, every one of those experiences, in some of them were just brought about out of pure necessity. You got into the corporate world out of necessity, right? After everything that had happened, but it all kind of came together, and all those experiences were necessary to build this next step, which is ultimately your purpose. And that's one thing that, the listeners' audience really needs to kind of take away from this is that, you may not be doing the exact thing that you want to do, but understand that it is a piece of the puzzle or a piece of the bigger picture that is what you are supposed to be doing in the future, even if it's not necessarily what you want in this moment.
Yeah, absolutely. The art of reinventing yourself. And you bring up a good point, the practical tools of what people can take away from this. And I'm all about application. So for the last 45 minutes or so, we've heard about Caleb's story and really my upbringing now. I'm all about application, seeing the link. Here's the application. You may be wondering, Caleb, that's all good and everything about your story. It sounds like you've been through a lot of mountains and valleys, but how does this apply to me? Well, here's how it applies to you. Step back from your life. If you've never done this exercise before, I encourage you to do it. Step back from your life and look at the whole timeline of your life and say, what is this a picture of? As if it were a dream, like if it were an allegory to be interpreted, like a C.S. Lewis or a Lord of the Rings book. What is my picture? What is my life a picture of? And what has it been saying to me? What are these nudges and these parables that are happening to me on a day-by-day basis in my workplace, in my life, relationally? How can I turn my passion from pain in those moments that were meant for darkness, but are ultimately going to point me towards the light? I'm going to give you a few examples here in the wrapping up moments and the closing moments. But here's some examples from real life. A couple of years ago, my family and I were at a beach. By the way, I share a lot of stories of my family. If you haven't noticed, but now I'm a family man. I am a family man, I love it.
I love it. No, it's perfect.
A couple of years ago, I went to the beach. It was right near my house, called Bluebird Beach, beautiful beach. And we went there, and we were sitting around at sunset, watching the golden glow come, just down over the mountains and shimmering off the lake. And there was this lady that was probably like in her 60s or whatever, and she's sitting alone reading a book, and she just had that look in her face of looking like life had really beaten her up. She just looked like really, really down, really traumatized, really just like almost like at the point of tears. I was thinking, oh man, that lady just looks, I turned to my mom and said, that lady over there just looks so lonely. And as I was saying that, this little baby, my parents and I just call them like fat cracks because they're beautiful little diapers and just like adorable cheeks to squeeze, little fat cracks. And her name was Destiny. The name of the child was Destiny. Cool name, by the way. But Destiny, and she's probably like, oh my goodness, like maybe 2 years old, like just like diapers and talking gibberish. But this empathetic empath child who had a lot of empathy and just really this sense of knowing when someone needs a lift in their lowest moment, she would go up and down the beach and she would toddle up and she'd come up to this lady and she grabbed her hand, and the lady looked up from her book, the one that was just had the downcast face, and little Destiny would go, and she would just talking gibberish, but it was like she was speaking life over that woman. Like, Amy, like in that moment, the woman's face and her whole countenance changed from depression to a smile to the brightness on her face of somebody crossed my path and really turned my pain into passion from pain. And her countenance was different. And the girl would just walk up and down the beach, and she wouldn't look for the couples that were dating or in a happy like picnic mode or the families that were all happy. She would single out people week after week when we go back, that little girl, and she would walk up to people like that older lady, grab the hand, touch them, and just go, and just that's a parable that most people would miss, thinking, oh, that's just a kid just being silly. But there's something more going on there. There's a human connection. There's that dynamic. That girl, when she grows up to be older, she already is operating in her gift of empathy, of deep feeling, and of lifting others out of the pit of despair. Another story that was a couple days ago, went to the same beach, and there's a little boy there that was just standing, like I'm just sitting there, the sun on my face, and all of a sudden I hear splashing. And out of my contemplative, meditative moment, I look over to the left and I see this little boy completely buck naked, butt cheeks to the wind, and he's got his sandcastle digger in his hand, and he's just like making sandcastles, and he's standing there with his hands in his hips, just like everything to the wind, and he just doesn't care that people are looking at him. And he's like, he was very proud of his creation, of what he had built with the sandcastle. And he's just like, we can learn so much from kids. Like, we really can. Like Jesus said, unless you become like a child, you can't see your purpose. You can't see the kingdom of heaven. You can't see that purpose. And so what I say from little Destiny, fat crack Destiny, to fat crack Eddie, I don't even know what his name was, but building the sandcastles, to being empathetic towards strangers, is this. They're people, they're little ones that are already walking in their gift. And that's what I call the I principle, EYE-I, the early years of entrepreneurial innovation. So if you're thinking, okay, Caleb, I'm not sure where to find my redemption in the pain that I've had, go back into your early childhood or somewhere in your life. I promise you, if you do this exercise and find those seasons where you were operating in something, even if it was during a season of great pain or great trauma. Like find those things that you operate in that you're passionate about and say, what is this a picture of? Like, what is this saying to me as far as my DNA of design, and seeing the link in my life? But let those little parables and those little situations and those encounters, don't let them pass by, but just really grab onto them, like the kids at the beach. Don't let a good experience pass you by, because I promise you that that nature and the world around you is speaking. Like, even, I promise this is my last story here.
You're good.
And that
You're
is,
good.
yeah.
I love stories. I'm a podcast.
Yeah, you love story. Yeah, you love podcasting, and that is the story of the doves. Podcasters love stories, but the story of the doves, and that is my family house, my parents' house where I live, because I rent from them. We've got doves that come by on a nightly basis to drink water from our little pond that we water next to our house. But this little mother dove and her husband or babies that come back to visit us night by night, and they know the sound of my mother's voice. Whenever my mother says, "Come here, pal, come here, dove, palomita," like in Spanish, like little palomita, and you hear the fluttering of the wings, and they'll sit in the fence, and they're as close as me to my camera that's in front of me talking, and they're not afraid, because the nature responds to frequency.
Yeah.
People they can trust. Doves trust. When they're in an environment they can trust, they're in that environment really for life, because this dove's been coming back for years and years and years. But it's just a thing wherever we go between here and Mexico. Doves follow us. They follow my mom. They follow myself. They follow our family, and they just come around and they just respond, especially to when my mother calls them to. It's the craziest thing. People think my mom, "Oh, you're nuts. It can't be possible." But she's got the video and the photos to prove it. I should send you some after the podcast here. But it's like,
no, I believe it.
Yeah. It's but just those things, right? Audience, look for those things that are there, that are abnormal, that are abstract, that other people would think is crazy, and see that link, and let nature and let life speak to you.
Yep, absolutely. And okay, I'll admit this. I don't have the doves that follow me, but if you see in the back, I've got a crow right here. I have the crows that come after me and follow me and caught me and my family no matter where we go. So I get it. I believe nature. It's gonna come out and it's gonna talk to you, and it
That's
happens.
right.
And
yes,
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd love to do here, just usually what I love to do here at the end of my chats, Amy, is I love to just leave the audience with like an exhortation, blessing, declaration over the people that are listening. And if people are comfortable with receiving, they can. If not, then they can obviously press pause on the podcast, and that's fine. But I really believe in just leaving a gift with people. And that is, I want to go back to what I talked about before when we talk about this art of reinventing yourself. 1 Chronicles 4:9-10, where it says, the blessing of enlarging the territory, a blessing to Jabez, and keeping God's hand with him to protect him from harm and not cause pain. So I just release a blessing and an ability on our audience. Maybe for those of you who have experienced the lonesome valley, you've experienced, or maybe are experienced and have experienced the valley of the shadow of death. You've experienced trauma. You've experienced pain. You've experienced seasons that have happened to you. Maybe you're going through them right now. But there is a lifting and there is a raising into your life, an ability of passion, an infusion of passion, of the Kadosh Ruah Yah, the breath of God, to fill your spirit, to fill your mind, to fill your body, spirit, soul, and body, with the courage to get up out of the trenches, to face the no man's land like Wonder Woman did, and really just put the shield of faith up and say, I'm going to walk through the barbed wire. I'm going to walk through this because I know that I'm not alone, that I know that other people have my back, like Caleb and Amy, but also a cloud of witnesses of those who have gone on before you that watch from heaven, that the Spirit of God, the Spirit of the Creator, the Spirit of life that is in your veins is walking with you through your lonesome valley as the lily of the valley, the rose of Sharon, and the staff of life, that staff that walks with you, though you walk through the valley of the shadow of death. I will fear no evil. Your rod and staff comfort me. So may the Spirit of God lift you, the Creator to lift you from the pain seasons that you've had, or the pain that you're going into, and molding into you. It's molding into you a mountaintop authority that is going to help you reach the purpose to which you're created, not just for your life, but for others, to help others see the link. So no matter where you are, listening from a car or a living room or a bedroom or an airport or a workplace, you are not alone in your journey. You are not alone. You are not alone. You are not alone. Your purpose is welcome on the earth. Your pain has purpose. To anyone who says they not see you in your pain, that's a lie. God sees you, and your true friends and the cloud of witnesses see you in your pain, because your pain is meant for something. It's meant for passion, a purpose, to reach the purpose to which you're created. So may you be infused with clarity on your conviction of your purpose and walking your purpose and your calling on the earth. May you always experience that overshadowing of the closeness of the Spirit of God and the Spirit of life in your life. Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for coming on, Caleb. That was just amazing. Such wonderful insight and amazing stories. And I know that you have touched some listeners and helped a lot of them figure out what's going on in their head, because a lot of us, they get stuck right there in the tangle web of all the thoughts and figuring everything out. And so I think you brought a lot of clarity to a lot of people through your experiences and your words. And where can people get a hold of you if they want more information, want some to connect? Where can they get a hold of you?
Sure. You can get a hold of me on the C-Link, of course, my motivational speaking business, which is at www.calebmatthews.net. So that's my main website for the C-Link, where you can find different past podcast libraries that I post for ones like this one, and it comes available on there, as well as content and YouTube videos and inspirational content on there. And of course, eventually I'm going to host my own podcast here in the next few months. Yay. And I'd love to have you on there, Amy, too, just to reciprocate, because you'd be a great guest. But you can find me on www.calebmatthews.net for the C-Link. And then, of course, the Itinerant Oasis. If you want to, book a place in San Jose de Cabo and you want to experience the beautiful sunny Baja, and you want to have a workspace, dedicated workspace to continue to do your online work or your content and keep in touch with people, look me up at www.theitinerantoasis.com. And of course, you can also find me on social media on Instagram, Caleb on the Runway. That's a shout out to my modeling years. Caleb on the Runway is on Instagram. And then X/Twitter, Caleb Matthews without the E. So you can see some of my posts on there too. And then Facebook, Caleb Matthews. That's my social media contact forms, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. All right. And then I'll have all of that linked in the description, if you're at a computer or on your phone, and so that you can absolutely get a hold of Caleb. It's going to be life-changing and transformative. So definitely reach out, get a hold of him, seek out his content. He's definitely an expert in all of this, and in the C-Link, the DNA, and all of it. And it's just been a pleasure talking with you and listening, and just thank you so much for coming on. And I'd love to be on your show. I'd love to hop on when you get that up and running. And so I just love it. And so thank you everybody for tuning in. And I love every single one of you. And until next time, in the next episode of Passion from Pain, hang in there, because we see you, we love you, and you're not alone. And just remember that, and always tune in here, because you've always got us here at Passion from Pain. Love you guys. Have a great one.